So we've put this on its own layer, this flat template, and we've also dragged a guide to this layer. Before I make a new layer and turn this first layer into like a background template, um, does anyone know this image has an X through it? Does anyone know what that means? See the X? It's selected right now, but sometimes when you select images, they don't have X's through them. So this X means it's an unembedded image, much like a smart object in Photoshop. An unembedded image is linked to the file, so it's still linked to my my basic flat templates in my downloads folder. So that can be problematic if you like take this home and you lose track of the files if you're moving from computer to computer. If you are working on your home computer, this wouldn't matter at all as long as you aren't moving files around all the time. But we can hit embed up here in the properties panel. Remember, my properties panel is at the top because I'm working on layout mode. If you open up in essentials, your property panel is going to be in a different spot. So I always work on layout because it looks the most like Photoshop and some other Adobe programs. So once we've hit embed, you can also hit unembed, which would ask me to relink it to the image, which we don't need to do. But once we've hit embed, this is now in the Illustrator file, and when we save it and open it up again, it would still be there no matter where we opened it. There is a downside to embedding images into Illustrator files, which is the files get really large. So if size is something you're worried about, it might be good to keep them unembedded. So that's embedding and unembedding, and now I'm going to come down to my layers panel. And right now we only have one object on this layer. If we expand it, we can see that we have the guide on the layer and we have the image on the layer. Right? I frequently don't use these carets, this like expandable section where you can see every individual object on the layer, but it's there for your reference. So I'm going to choose new layer, and then coming back to layer 1, I'm going to rename it templates, and I'm going to double click on it and actually check off this option called template, which dims the image and it automatically locks the layer. So now I can't accidentally select this image, which is really important. Putting your shit on a template is just a nice way to be organized, and then you aren't always fighting with your background image. So I'm going to draw a t-shirt. And we are going to flip the t-shirt. We're just going to draw the left half. We're going to flip the t-shirt. We're going to join it together. And then we are going to talk about splitting flats and combining flats. And we're going to review the live paint tool, which I think might be kind of a lifesaver in some situations if you're struggling with drawing flats. So I wanted to draw today with the pencil tool instead of with the pen tool, and so I'm going to use my Wacom tablets and my Wacom pen, and I'm going to draw using the pencil tool. The pencil tool, anyone know how it differs from the pen tool? You guys experimented with it at all? It lives underneath... Cancel. It lives underneath the shaper tool, so you can click and hold on the shaper tool, or its keyboard shortcut is N. So the pencil tool allows you to draw your lines directly. So if I draw a scribble like this with the pencil tool, it pretty much directly allows me to draw, right? Drew a squiggle. If I wanted to draw this same squiggle with the pen tool, I would click and drag out a handle, and then come down over here and click and drag out a handle, and click and drag out a handle, click and drag out a handle, right? So some pros and cons. Let me make these both thicker so you guys can see them. The pro to drawing with the pen tool is that it's really precise and it allows you to use easily the least number of anchor points. This only has 4 anchor points in it. This path, although it looks pretty good, it has about a dozen anchor points in it. So this would be much harder to edit, but this is actually how I'm going to draw my flat today. So the pencil tool is really nice for more organic shapes, but I am going to use it to draw precisely, just to kind of show what that is like. So I'm going to zoom in on the bodice here and start drawing the left half. So I'm grabbing the pencil tool, and I am going to draw one line segment at a time. So I'm not trying to go crazy and draw around the whole shape. We can continue the line. Right now, my pencil tool has a star next to it, and the star means it's going to start a new line. So I can click and drag. And even if it's not perfect, we can always switch to our white selection tool and adjust. Or if we really don't want an anchor point there that it made, we can remove that anchor point. If we switch to the pen tool and hover over this, it will subtract that anchor point without deleting the line. It just subtracts the effect that anchor point has. I have a random invisible shape there. Okay. So once we think this looks good, or we could have adjusted this after we drew the whole sweat t-shirt or this whole half of the t-shirt, doesn't matter. I'm going to make sure that this is selected and then switch back to the pencil tool. So right now, my pencil tool has a star next to it, which means it would happily draw any new shape. But if I have a shape selected and I grab the pencil tool, I'm looking for the slash next to the pencil tool, right? So right now it's got a star next to it, and now it's got a slash next to it. And so that means it's going to continue this line. The slash means I'm going to continue the line to make a closed shape. So I can come down to there. And again, I'm looking for that slash. So without switching any tools, I can just keep drawing like this, looking for the slash and continuing the line. I have my pencil tool on like the super smoothing settings. So any waveriness that my hand has is getting mostly eliminated. You can adjust that by double-clicking on the pencil tool. And I like to have this slider all the way over to the right, but if you want kind of that hand feel drawnness to it, you can move it over more to accurate. But I like to keep it on smooth. And then I am going to come down to the hip with the t-shirt. So right here, it decided, I'm switching to the white selection tool, it decided that this anchor point should be a smoothing anchor point. It didn't put a hard corner there. So the easiest way to get rid of those handles is to come up to the Convert tab and choose the corner anchor points. Okay? You guys paying attention? I think this review will be handy for y'all. So I've converted that to a corner anchor point, and I could adjust any of this nonsense to make up for that. And I'm going to come down to the waistband. So make sure this is selected, and then with the pencil tool I can continue the line. I think it continued, yeah. So again, it kind of made an extra anchor point that I don't really like, so I can move to the pen tool and subtract that anchor point. I just have to make sure it's selected ahead of time, and then we can adjust. So I am going to purposely leave these collars with kind of imperfect edges so that we can join them together and flatten them and fix that butt-shaped collar problem that you might have run into. Let's flip this. The most straightforward way to flip things is to have it selected and then go to Object, Transform, Reflect, or you can right-click and choose Transform, Reflect, and then we're reflecting it over the vertical. And I'm going to hit copy because I need one for the left and one for the right. So we slide this baby over. So we still have two shapes, and it's nice to make complete closed shapes. Even if you're going to be drawing or filling in the color with the live paint tool, which doesn't require you to make closed shapes, the easiest way to get rid of this butt is, in my opinion, to join these anchor points. So I'm going to select them both. And you need to have only two endpoints selected for the anchor points to work. Like this is an endpoint because it doesn't have a line segment coming out of it on both sides. But if I tried to join this point together and this point together, it wouldn't let me do that. It would give me an error message because those are two corner points, right? So we select both of these, right-click, average, right-click, join. And now this is one anchor point. And if I come up to the Properties panel at the top, I can choose to convert this anchor point to a smooth anchor point, right? So this is how you get rid of your butts. You use this smooth point handle, and then you can adjust. Sometimes you have to make certain handles smaller so that things look nice and smooth. Mine looked pretty good there. So now that's nice and smooth. Let's do it again down here. We've got two endpoints there. I'm going to select them both, right-click, average, right-click, join. And now I can convert to a smoothie. There we go. So that's the body of my t-shirts. And before I move to the arms and some other stuff, there's like a couple things I wanted to talk about that I ran into in the first class. There are three types of editing tools under the eraser. So I'm going to copy and paste this and talk about them for a second. The eraser tool erases solid shapes. So if I wanted to add, I don't know, this, I'm not sure I would use it for this exactly, but if I wanted to make this into kind of a trim or like, I don't know, a fringe, right? So we could do something like this, and we're carving away part of the shape. You can double click on the eraser to adjust the size. So if I wanted it to be a narrower size, I could do just 5 points.
Could you do that if you wanted like a slit in the bottom?
It's a good option, yeah, for a slit. And then like if I wanted these to be pointy at the top, these are all editable, so like I could just adjust or like remove anchor points. Yeah, sometimes the eraser tool is exactly what you need. So that's the eraser tool. It removes solid objects while keeping them like closed, right? The next one underneath that, I'm going to skip the scissor tool for a second and we're going to go to the knife tool. So you have to have the object selected and then switch to the knife tool. And the knife tool instantly cuts up a shape. So I've been having you do it with the Pathfinder tool, which I think is the most, Pathfinder divide is the most precise way to divide objects, and I'm going to review that in a minute. But the knife tool allows you to just draw lines through it, and it instantly splits these into individual shapes. So if I move to the black selection tool now, I can select these and make them all different colors. So the knife tool is another possible option. I'm gonna essentially make this pattern in a totally different way over here, but that is the knife tool. So there's also the scissor tool, which when I was drawing the sleeve in the first class, it did something funky when I grabbed the pencil tool and started drawing. It like adjusted it in a super weird way, and then I like couldn't reflect the sleeve. So I ended up cutting out the sleeve. Essentially, where the knife tool allows you to cut solid objects, the scissor tool allows you to cut lines. So if I only need a small segment of this line for some reason, if I only want this section on the left side, I could grab my scissor tool and give this a couple clicks, and now I have a special line segment that's only that long. So the scissor tool cuts up cuts up lines, the knife tool cuts up shapes, and the eraser tool erases shapes. I don't know what. I've seen the eraser tool act weird around lines. Like if I tried to have this selected and switch to the eraser tool, in some of the old versions it wouldn't work, but it works fine here actually. It's just like with most of these tools, they have to be selected first. So I am going to draw some sleeves on here. I'm going to grab the pencil tool, and I'm going to make sure that this shape is deselected. If I start drawing with the pencil tool and this shape is selected, like it did earlier, it could like adjust this sleeve, so it just does weird stuff. Like it joined this top line and not this, I don't know what, yeah. So anyway, if you deselect first, it won't do that, and it will just start a new line. So I have nothing selected right now. I'm grabbing my pencil tool, and I am drawing each section. And I can always come back and like polish any of these up with my white selection tool. Like here, I have like a tiny gap. You guys can see it now at least. Tiny gap in between the edge and the armpit, so I can adjust that. If I don't want this anchor point, I can subtract it using the pen tool. It's just got to be selected first, and I can adjust this point. So once you think the arm is looking good, I have not made like a whole complete shape like I normally do. If we tried to fill this with color right now, we would have this like weird line disappearing there. It wouldn't fill in properly. But I'm gonna leave it like this because we are going to use the live paint tool to kind of fix that. So I'm drawing a little sloppily so that I can show you the benefits of the live paint tool. So let me reflect this. Slide it over, and let's make the back of the t-shirt too. I'm actually just, to make the back of this t-shirt, I'm just going to copy and paste this little section and fill it with nothing right now and raise the back. And again, I haven't made a nice closed shape here, but the live paint bucket tool is going to kind of solve that for me. So let's draw a few more style lines on here. I'm just going to grab the pencil tool and start drawing. I'm going to do a shape like similar to this example that I made. And I don't have to be perfect with these, I'm just starting at the edge and trying to end at the edge. And I'm going to make these all different colors using the paint bucket tool. I just want to get rid of this moment here so it's at least not sticking out anymore. So I feel like I should probably make a collar before I move on. So I'm going to copy and paste these lines again. So I'm copying this one, give it no fill, and I'm going to copy this one. And this isn't going to be a ribbed collar. We can do a ribbed section in a minute. So I am going to grab, I'm going to select both of these actually and go to Object, Path, Object, Path, Offset, Path, and we're going to check off Preview. And that's probably a good thickness for the collar. So I'm going to hit OK. And I actually only want, the way I'm going to draw this collar this time, I actually only want the top half of these. I want the bottom of the collar to end right here. So I'm going to delete these lower anchor points. Got to make sure that they are the ones selected. Same for this. And now I'm going to select the two endpoints and just choose join. So this isn't a function of join that I use that often, but if you don't hit average first and you just choose join, it draws a straight line between the two anchor points you've selected. So I'm still choosing only endpoints, but I'm using this function in order to help me draw my shape. Join those, and then these should pretty perfectly line up down here, and we can finesse some of the anchor points. So just trying to get them lined up. I have lines here that I kind of don't want anymore, so I'm going to adjust these until we actually have space there. This is I think this is like maybe controversial, but that's the collar I'm sticking with right now. We can adjust these inwards. Okay, so filter other offset is a nice way to create something that is like exactly the same width the whole time. So I'm going to select all of this. I didn't do the best job on that collar, but that's mostly like the glitchiness of Illustrator when you're making like those really tight points. For some reason, it doesn't like them all the time. Sorry, I'll try to stop hitting my Wacom tablets. So we've drawn a shape that we like, and we haven't worried about making closed shapes this whole time. Before I grab the live paint tool, I'm going to copy and paste some areas where I want stitch lines. So paste that. It's nice, it's good practice to make sure your stitch lines have no fill on them. And I'm doing this ahead of time because it would be hard to copy and paste this line after the live paint tool got a hold of it. But we don't have to include these stitch lines in the live paint tool. We're actually going to select around them. And I think that that's That's my favorite way to use the live paint tool, is to get the stitching done ahead of time, but then hopefully you can select everything but the stitching. So now I can give these some stitch lines. We're going to find our stroke panel and check off dashed line. And I like to give it a 2-point dash and a 2-point gap, and you give it a round cap. So the round cap takes it from looking like, takes the stitch from looking like a rectangle and makes it look nice and smooth. So that's supposed to represent the needle going in and out of the fabric, or the thread coming in and out of the fabric. So now selecting everything but those stitch lines, I'm going to find the live paint tool, which lives under the shape builder tool, live paint bucket tool. You can also just hit K. So a lot of times I'm finding it easier to hit K. So you grab the live paint bucket tool, and when I hover over this, it actually says click to make a live paint group. So that's what I'm going to do. The first click is just to tell it that this is now a live paint group. And once it's a live paint group, it can be kind of hard to change things. But honestly, it is pretty flexible. It's probably a good idea to create a backup version. So if I want to duplicate this layer, might be a nice option, right? And then we could shut off layer 1 and only work on the copy, or and then in case we need to change anything or something drastic happens, we still have that other layer. But honestly, it seems like the live paint tool is really well designed now. They've made it better. So select everything but the stitch lines, live paint tool, live paint bucket tool, click to make a live paint group. And it filled it with nothing right now, which is very interesting. But I don't know why my tools over here keep moving away. We're going to go to our swatches, and we're going to click on our swatch color that we want to use, and we can start filling these various areas with color. We can't see the stitch lines anymore, but that's just a stacking problem, right? They just aren't arranged in the right order on the page. So if you guys notice, I've clicked on this little green, and to the left of this green is a yellow, and to the right of this green is a blue. And when I hover with my live paint tool, live paint bucket tool, you can see the little green selected above it, and then to the left of it is a yellow, and to the right of it is a blue. So the live paint bucket tool, are you all watching? The live paint bucket tool gives you 3 options for color, and they can be toggled between by using the arrow keys, okay? So the arrow keys are stepping through these existing colors. If I choose this orange, then I can press the left arrow key to get the red, or the right arrow key to get the yellow. Right, so I'm able to toggle through all of my swatches that way. So that's a nice option. This tool really is a lifesaver if you have not, if you've had trouble making the object successfully, I don't know, whole and filled and precise. I still prefer working with precise closed shapes, but I really think that if you've made a mistake, this is a great option, or if maybe this is how you prefer to work. So we've designed our shirts, but now we want to change something. So there is a lot of options to do that with the live paint tool. If we just adjust some anchor points we've drawn, the live paint tool kind of magically keeps the left filled with blue and the right filled with purple, no matter where I move these lines. And this is honestly something that would not happen if you had built your flats the way I had been suggesting that you filled your flats, right? If we wanted to change these lines after we had split this garment using the Pathfinder divide tool or the knife tool or whatever, we would have to move one line and then the other line in order to use it. You can also adjust like the endpoints, and after a certain amount of area, it will stop recognizing this as a separate area from this, but it's not instant. So even if I've made a mistake and my line doesn't go all the way to the edge, it still will fill up to the gap. It's pretty good at gap detection, is what it's called. Eventually, though, like this, the gap is too much and it decides that's all one area. But I can fix that. I can drag that back over here, and then I can grab my paint bucket tool again and grab the right color. K, yes. Paint bucket tool is K. So let's say you want to add more stripes at this point. We can draw more stripes right on here, but right away we will kind of be able to tell that they are sitting on top of the paint bucket or the live paint object. They aren't they aren't part of the live paint bucket, right? If we hit K right now and tried to fill these sections, we would still only be filling the whole sleeve, right? Like that. So we need to add these lines to the live paint tool, to the live paint object. So we select all of it, including the new lines we've drawn, and then we come up to the properties panel and we choose merge live paint. So this is going to add these new lines we drew to the live paint tool, merge live paint. And now when we hit K for the live paint bucket tool and we choose our colors, we can fill these in separately. It weirdly did not recognize this one. I guess I have too much gap on one side or the other. But all I had to do was adjust the endpoints and it instantly started recognizing it again as separate live paint. So this is a bit different than like if we split it using the Pathfinder divide function or if we split it using the knife tool, in that these are not separate objects now. If we started going into object expand and trying to separate these out into their little vector objects, it gets really confusing really fast. So it's nice to keep the live paint objects as live paint objects and just know how to edit them and work with them. So I'm actually going to right click, arrange, send to back, because remember I drew stitch lines at some point and they're still back there, just the order is incorrect. So there are my stitch lines and here's my t-shirt. Let's see if we can't make a back version of this t-shirt by adapting the live paint object. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I can start, I guess we want this to come all the way over there, but we don't need this line anymore. So now that I've like adjusted the back collar to look like the back view, it's kind of removed all of my different color blocking from this area. But all I have to do to fix that is raise these lines so that they come all the way up to the collar again, and then fix these with my live paint bucket tool. Okay, so I hit K again, and I can start coloring them different colors. I guess we can make it match the front. There we go. You guys have questions on the live paint tool? Is it interesting? Can you see yourself using it? Is it no? If you're making good flats, you don't need to use it. Good is obviously an objective term there. These flats look fine, and I would have no way, if I saved this as a JPEG, I would have no way of knowing how you built this, right? So that's why I think in an emergency, if you have like so many objects and you can't figure out where you've messed up, where you've messed up, like bringing this all back to white and using the live paint bucket tool, it could really save you. Okay, so I'm gonna label that layer t-shirt, and I'm gonna shut it off using the I button and create a new layer. And we are going to, we're gonna draw a skirt and a pants really quick. And we're going to talk about brushes kind of as we go. So this will be my skirt layer. And I'm going to keep drawing with the pencil tool for a little while, but there are parts where I just prefer to draw with the pen tool for the precision of it. But if you're having trouble with the pen tool, the pencil tool is awesome. If you have a Wacom pen, which you can check out around the corner. So I'm going to draw a straight line. Actually, if I hold shift while using the pencil tool, I will automatically draw a straight line. And then I'm looking for the slash button there, and that means it's going to continue this line when I draw. I don't like that one. And then I'm going to draw one smooth line down to here. In the first class, I tried drawing like the wavy lines with the pencil tool, and I think if I practiced, I could get good at this, but this isn't the way that I'm most comfortable making waves. So I'm just going to draw a smooth line, and then we're going to add waves. So we've drawn the line, and we have the whole thing selected, and if we switch to the pen tool will add anchor points to this curved path down the bottom here. So we're going to add a handful, and then we grab the handles of these anchor points and we turn them vertically. And then we will reflect this shape. So for the t-shirt, I did all of my reflecting by going to Object, Transform, Reflect. But there's also a Reflect tool, which lives under the Rotate tool, the Reflect tool. And if you Alt-click anywhere on the center guide, you only need to choose one spot. And it's only looking for like the vertical axes that it's going to flip over. So I'm holding Alt and I'm clicking on the center guide, and it's automatically going to put this dress in exactly the right spot. So I'm going to hit copy. And then select my two endpoints, average, and join. So do the same for the bottom, average, and join. So now I have a nice closed solid shape, and I'm going to draw a waistband on this, and I'm going to draw it using the Pathfinder tool. We've talked about so many different ways to do all of these things, but the Pathfinder tool will split this into two separate shapes. You just have to draw a line that starts outside of the object and ends outside of the object. For Pathfinder Divide to work, your line has to completely intersect the object. And then we choose both objects, and we choose Pathfinder Divide. And then ungrouping allows us to fill this section with a different color, a different pattern, or whatever. So that's Pathfinder Divide. You could also fill this with different color by splitting it with the knife tool, or you could draw this with different color by drawing a line on top of it and then turning the whole object into a live paint group. There's so many different ways to accomplish everything. Pathfinder divide is nice because now we have two separate objects which are easily understandable. So I'm going to draw some fullness lines, and then we're going to add the curved stitch line to the bottom of this. The fullness lines I draw with the line segment tool, but really it's personal preference. One thing I will say about them is that it's really nice to draw your fullness lines all starting at the bottom and going up. And if you draw them all consistently, starting at the bottom anchor points and going up, when we apply the tapered brush stroke, they will all get the tapered brush stroke going in the same direction. So I will demonstrate by drawing one of these starting in the middle of the dress and going down. Okay, so all of them I've started at the hem and gone up. For this one, I'm going to start in the middle of the dress and end at the hem. And then we're going to select all these babies. And I'm coming up next to the stroke. There's something called the variable width profile, but I'm going to choose this tapered one that starts really thick and ends really thin. And for all of the lines that I drew starting at the bottom and going up, they taper appropriately. And then this poor sad line is very upside down. Can you guys see that? This one starts thick in the wrong spot. So I'm going to delete that and draw it again, starting from the bottom. And then apply my stroke. And I think these were all 2 points. So there we have some fullness lines. Let's get some stitch lines going. The easiest way I've found to copy the stitch lines is to select your dress so that you don't accidentally select the anchor points from your fullness lines. If you select the dress, it's easier to then select the anchor points on the dress. So I'm going around and I'm selecting all of my curvy anchor points in the center here. And then we're going to go to Edits, Copy, Edit, Paste in front. And now we have a beautiful shape. I'm going to make sure that this shape, for good practice, I should make sure that it has no fill on it. And then with it selected, we're going to make it have stitch lines, right? So we're going to go to the stroke panel, check off dashed line, give it a 2-point dash and a 2-point gap, and choose round cap. And then sometimes it's necessary to finesse some things, like the edge of the stitch line comes out a little bit over here, and we don't want that. I also pretty much always go around and I line up my, my anchor points kind of with my fullness lines, which I think kind of looks the most natural when it's lined up. But sometimes you can get away without doing this. Does making the skirt make sense? All right. Oh, I want to adjust this too. Let's. Do you guys have any questions so far? Let's add ribbing to this dress, and this is going to be one way that we talk about brushes in this class. And you're gonna make brushes as like an in-class activity. So for ribbing to work, it's nice to draw ribbing that's like the size that you need. So I'm gonna draw a line that is taller than my waistband because I'm gonna make it a ribbed waistband. And also, we don't need it to be dashed, so I'm going to turn that off. And we probably want it to be only 1 point, nice and thin. And we've made a 1x1 rib before, where the space in between the vertical lines is the same throughout. But let's make a 2x2 rib instead. So I copy and paste this guy, and we're going to drag them both. We're going to make these both a brush. So with them selected, I'm now in my brushes panel. So if you don't have a panel out that I'm talking about, if you ever don't have a panel out that I'm talking about, you can go to Window and find the panel. So we're using brushes right now. And I'm going to choose New Brush in the Brushes panel. Right? New brush. You guys, brushes are ways that you can work smarter and not harder, right? If I had to draw each line of ribbing individually on this waistband, it would be terrible, right? It would be just laborious. So instead, we're going to draw 2 lines and make them into a brush. I'm choosing New Brush, and then we choose Pattern Brushed. We mostly use pattern brushes, but we are going to talk about scatter brushes today. We're going to use a pattern brush. A pattern brush. And I am going to make the spacing, say, 100%. And let's see how that looks when we apply it to a brush. So this is my brush in here. It looks like 2 lines on it, but that's right. That's what it should look like. And you can't see a brush until you apply it to a line. So I'm going to draw a quick demonstration line and choose this brush. So it's applying the brush to that line. So now we have a rib, and there's like a little bit extra space in between them. It's not perfectly even. This is more like a 2 by 2 rib. So we are going to put this on the waistband. I think this is a benefit of using the Pathfinder tool or splitting it some other way besides using the live paint tool to fill stuff. It would be hard to use any kind of thing from the live paint tool to make a clipping mask, right? So we're going to make a clipping mask, which is going to adjust this so that all of these stitch lines don't show up outside of the waistband. Okay, so no fill. We only want the stroke on this. And I'm going to adjust it until I think it looks like it makes sense for like how it would actually be falling, kind of. So once I have this layer laid out appropriately, I actually need this shape in the back. I need that to be in the front to create a clipping mask. So I'm going to copy and paste that shape. Here it is, and we are going to give it a funny color right now for demonstration purposes. It doesn't need a fill, and we're going to give it a funny green stroke. Right, so this is going to be essentially invisible in the end, and it's going to clip this shape to the edges of this shape. So this has to be the frontmost object, this clipping mask object. So right click, arrange, bring to front if it's not, and then we select both of them. So I have the line selected and I have the clipping mask object selected, which is the size of my waistband. I copied and pasted my waistband to make it, and I brought it all the way to the front. With both of them selected, we go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and it instantly clips. You can still see the line continues outside of the clipping mask, but we only have the ribbing there now. Okay, so that's the ribbing brush, and this time we made a 2 by 2 ribbing brush. So let's make a pant. And we're going to add studs to the outside of the pant as another example brush. I'm going to make a little pair of shorts. I'm going to use the pen tool now, just for efficiency's sake. Pants, sometimes you would want to join the left side to the right side and not have like a closed vertical seam. But in this case, I think I actually am going to close this seam off. Most pants have a seam in the middle of the left and right leg, like on the center front and the center back. There would be a vertical seam here. So it's not necessarily incorrect to work like that. So I'm making the line a little thicker. So I'm going to reflect this. Again, I'm going to grab my reflect tool and Option or Alt click anywhere on the center guide and hit copy. So now we have two of these babies. Come on. Okay. Make sure the color or the fill is in the front. We could have these be two different colors now, which maybe that's something you'd want to do. So I'm just going to draw a waistband on here. It depends on the situation. You definitely could split it like we did with the skirt layer, or if there's so many different options. If I wanted these to be different colors or different textures, we could use the live paint bucket tool. And I'm going to draw a fly on here. So flies are generally top stitched. Right, so we are going to make this into a normal stitch line. So it has no fill, and we're going to come over to stroke and check off dashed line. And honestly, there are our pants. Let's jazz these up a little bit by adding like studding to the outside of them. On our Moodle today, March 5th, class 7th, under this word handout, how to make brushes, there are a series of handouts all made by, they're all made by Meg, so some of them I'm like, that's not exactly how I would have done that, but honestly they'll mostly all get you there. Let's look at how she makes a stud brush and open that up. So she draws a square and then she draws lines through the square, and she uses the Pathfinder divide in order to split the square up into 4 triangles. So we'll do it that way. It seems pretty good. It's nice to draw your brushes and your symbols at the size that you want them to be. So I'm just going to draw a tiny little stud, make sure it has a solid line, and let's go down to 1 point right now just so we can get more detail in there. And I'm going to draw 2 lines going directly through it. So we can then grab all of these shapes and choose the Pathfinder panel. Remember, you can always go to Window, Pathfinder to find it, and choose Divide. And this happened last time where like Illustrator glitched out. I'm going to ungroup these so that I can play with them separately. Illustrator put like pointy ends on some of the ends and not pointy ends on the others. So I just select all of them, and then back in my stroke panel, we can adjust to the type of corner. So if we want it to have beveled corners with like a little hard edge on it, or if we want to have rounded corners, we can adjust that here. So then we can choose these and have them be kind of all different colors to kind of show the reflectiveness of the sequin or the stud or whatever this is. And now we're going to turn this into a pattern brush. So we're going to go back to our brushes panel, and we're going to choose new brush, pattern brush, and hit OK. And we probably want a little bit of space in between them, so I'm going to say like 15%. We'll see how that looks, and we can hit OK. So now I'm going to copy and paste the outside line of these pants. And there it is, and we'll give it no fill, just to be good practice, right? We can select this line and choose our brush. And there we have all of our studs on our pants without having to copy and paste 1 million studs. There they all are. Now, if you wanted to remove these 3 studs, we could just adjust the line until it stops there. That's fine. But I'm going to take this as an opportunity to expand this brush. So if you go to Object, Expand Appearance, you can customize every single object individually. So I'm going to go to Expand Appearance, and then it's still a grouped function. So I'm going to right-click and choose Ungroup, or you can go to Object, Ungroup, and then I can delete these. So you could do the same thing with any vector brush. So if you've made a shape and you kind of in general want to just get it in the right spot, you can then kind of finesse it afterwards after going to Object Expand to get it to be perfect, right? So I guess let's put a row of them above this line too. So we're going to go to Edit Copy, Edit Paste in Front, and there we have that, and we will choose the studs. And I can adjust the endpoints. And I probably want to remove or like adjust some of these so that they hit correctly. Like one probably wouldn't be in the center front there, right on the seam. So I'm going to select the line and then go to Object, Expand Appearance. And now, after I ungroup them, these are all individual editable objects. So that's it's a really nice option for brushes. Let's go back to the skirt layer. Do you guys have questions on anything so far? Are you feeling the brushes? Are you understanding the brushes? Touch the brushes. So we are going to make a scatter brush now, and we're going to add like kind of a sparkle sequin pattern to this garment. So we're going to look at Meg's option, how to make a sequin brush. And where a pattern brush organizes each element individually into a line, the scatter brush is going to end up being something more like this, where each of the elements is kind of randomly adjusted by the computer. For putting, so like it's a great way if you want something to look like it's been randomly applied. It's like how you do it, right? If I wanted to make a confetti birthday party cake pattern with like a bunch of confetti exploding everywhere, a scatter brush is a nice place to start. And then I can go to Object Expand and I can like individually adjust each of the layers. So let's draw a sequin. She starts out with a circle. We can review what she does really quick. She starts out with a circle, and then she adds a hexagon in the middle, and she fills the middle hexagon with white to make that look like it's kind of the glimmery, shiniest part. So I'm going to zoom in and try to draw a pretty small circle. Make sure I'm on the right layer and that layer is unlocked. maybe even a tiny bit smaller. So we're going to draw 3 lines through this circle. And I can always adjust these. And then again, we're going to select them all, and Pathfinder Divide is going to remove the kind of ship wheel spokes that I've drawn and clip it all to the circle, and it's also going to divide this circle into these pizza slices. So now, if I want to, I actually don't have to ungroup this. Ungrouping it is totally an option, but you can also use the group selection tool, which allows you to select objects inside a group, and we can apply the colors that way. Or I could have ungrouped it, or I could have double-clicked on it to enter isolation mode and edited it in isolation mode. So once I think it looks pretty good, I'm going to draw a hexagon. If I click with the polygon tool, that's how I can tell it. I'm just clicking anywhere with it. That's how I can tell it how many sides I want. So 6 is good right now. Way too big though. Place it and fill it with white. So that's kind of the glimmery bit of the sequin, and that looks pretty good. So once we have made our artwork, again, we are just going to come to the brushes panel and choose new brush. And we could make a pattern brush where these would be all in the same direction and all like perfectly arranged, but instead we're going to make a scatter brush, and we have a number of variables here: size, spacing, scatter, and rotation, and we are going to change all of these to random. So spacing is like how far apart on the line the sequins show up. And scatter is how far off the line they will be. Rotation and size are pretty straightforward. And then you have to set a low limit and a high limit with these sliders. So for rotation, we can have it rotate fully around. So I'm going to make this the lowest and the highest options here. For everything else, we really don't want to go crazy. These sliders go all the way up to 1000%, and in the size function, that would be a huge sequin, totally unnecessary. So really we want to keep, in general, with most scatter brushes, you don't want to like go over 200% on the high side, and we can always adjust these depending on what we think. So let's see how this looks. We'll do all of these at around 50. And we're going to hit OK, and we're going to try it out on a brush. So notice I didn't get a pattern brush showing up in the bottom. My symbol showed up in this scatter brush section. It's for some reason organized in like a separate area. So let's see this, get rid of the fill, and then choose our scatter brush. So there she is. And what we can do is, if any of this looks too wild to us or like not wild enough, we can double click on the scatter brush and adjust some of these. So I feel like they should be moving off of, they're kind of stuck to the path right now. So I'm going to add more scatter, a little bit wider on that scatter range. And let's just adjust that and hit OK for now. And if you've already applied this brush to a stroke, it asks you, do you want to update the existing strokes, and I do. So I'm going to choose apply to strokes. And that's looking a little bit better. Maybe we could go even further on the scatter and lower that size adjustment a bit. Really, this is all just like you trying to figure out what you want. So I like it better when they're like all kind of closer to the same size. Really, it's just what we're trying to do in this. And I am going to make a clipping mask with the skirt so that it looks like this skirt is covered in these shiny, randomly applied sequins. So I'm going to grab, well, I'm going to draw the line first. And we are going to apply that brush. And if you want things to be bigger or smaller, you can adjust the stroke, right? So one way or the other. I think it looks pretty good. It seems like if you choose the brush again, it will kind of give you a different scatter options. So that's a possibility. And now I'm going to clip this brush to the edge of the dress by copying and pasting the dress and putting it on the front as a clipping mask object, right? So edit, copy, edit, paste. It's might not be in the front, just to be really sure. I'm going to go object, arrange, bring to front, and get it lined up. And then we select this and we select the line. Object, clipping mask, make. Okay, we can still adjust this path individually. If we double click on a clipping mask layer, we can select this existing line. See, I can adjust it and move it around. And if like I don't like right here where like these three are all kind of touching, I hate that. So I'm gonna go to Object, Expand Appearance. And I might have to ungroup, and then I can fix that moment. God, so much better. So that is a scatter brush. You guys have questions on brushes? So after break, I still have a little bit more lecture, but after break for an in-class activity today, I would love it if you worked through making a few brushes as practice and saved them as a brush library. So I am going to actually I'm going to save this brush library, so if I were like going to a different computer, I could bring these brushes with me to a different computer, or just bring them from file to file. So I'm going to delete all the ones I don't want. And I'm going to come down to this library brush menu, and as an aside, there are all kinds of like decorative brushes in here automatically. Right? Any of these, and these could be fun borders or whatever. So it might be fun for you guys to play with the different brush types. But we are going to choose Save Brushes. And it's automatically, when you choose Save Brushes, it automatically tries to have you save the brush inside the Illustrator brush folder, which is inside like the Illustrator application, like installation folder or whatever it is. This is a good place to save your brushes if you're working on your home computer, because then you will automatically be able to access the brushes through the brush menu. But if you are going to take your brushes to a different computer and try to reload them, it's nice to save them where you know that they're going to be, and then back them up on your flash drive or your Google Drive or whatever. So we are going to call these Fashion Brushes 2. We're going to choose Save. And this is on my desktop. And now, if I were to start a new document, I wouldn't have access to these brushes instantaneously. I am going to have to load them in. So you can see that those brushes I spent so long on are now no longer in my brush library. So I can come down to the little library panel. It looks like a stack of books. We can go to all the way down to the bottom to Other Library and choose Fashion Brushes 2. And notice this is saved as an Illustrator file. If you open it up, it would probably open up blank. If you like double clicked on it and launched Illustrator. It's really meant to be opened this way through the brushes panel. But I'm going to hit open. And here they are, all of my brushes. And as I click on them, they will get added to my normal brushes panel over here. So that's how you save and load brushes. I forgot to make one of the brushes, which I think will be helpful to make, which is the cording brush. I just think that this one is going to be a good example because this one involves using a invisible bounding box, much like our repeating patterns that we learned how to make last year, or when I made a zipper brush, I used a repeating box. So she draws a 45-degree angled line, and then she converts the endpoints to curvy handles and makes them look like this, like an S. She then copies and pastes this. I don't know. I feel like this should be a little bit more balanced. Give me 1 second. So I am going to copy and paste this. And then she uses that same join function where the join is just going to draw a line in between these two. We aren't going to average those points first. So we select the two endpoints and choose join. And now we get a closed line there, join. So now we have a closed shape, and we're going to make 2 of them and fill them with color. Better color. So once these are made, what we need to do is create a rectangle that goes from essentially the center of one to the center of the other. I had trouble getting this to line up well last time. I felt like it should maybe look more like this, but we're going to draw that rectangle. I'm just going to reference Megs for a second. This rectangle, eventually we will put no fill and no stroke on it. Yeah, I feel like hers are wider in this very interesting way, but I'm not going to back it up. We're just going to see how this looks. Okay, so what should be happening is that like where this goes off the page, it should come on over here, and we're looking to create a seamless shape. It might even help to have me fill in these top parts with third and fourth shape, right? So this center box is going to be the only thing that shows up in the artwork, and everything else is just there in order to help me get the repeating kind of pattern correct. So we're going to send this to the back. The bounding box has to be the backmost object, and we're going to put no fill and no stroke on it, and then select everything. We're going to come over to our brush panel and choose New Brush, Pattern Brush. Okay. And we can tell that my bounding box did work. If I had not put the bounding box on there, I can show you what that looks like too, but it would have space in between each of the elements. Right? If we select this and we don't choose the bounding box, so I've just got my artwork selected, I don't have that like cropping bounding box that I made, we can choose New Brush, Pattern Brush, and you can see that there it puts space in between each of the pieces. So instead of looking like this, the pattern brush would look like this without a bounding box on it. So that one's trash. So what is this, Kelsey? What did you just make? Is what the last class asked me. They were like, I don't understand why you made this. Just in case that is what you are thinking. Cording is kind of like, you could use that for sweatshirt strings or shoelaces, or cording is used in, I always associate this type of technique with like Western style shirts where they do this kind of filigree with cording. So it can be used for details, but then also as like a decorative element. I think this is a nice way to illustrate drawstrings, any of that kind of stuff. And really, this was just my way of demonstrating that this kind of bounding box works with the brushes, and it can be really useful in certain situations. In the zipper brush that I made with you guys in an earlier lecture, we used a bounding box, but actually the zipper brush that is explained in this handout does not use a bounding box. It's a much simpler zipper than I designed with you. So those are all of our brushes. I am going to talk about colors for a second. Actually, Finder. We have been working together on my mood board, and I've just dropped this into Illustrator, and I'm going to pick some colors out of it, and we're going to talk about honestly 3 or 4 different ways to make color palettes in Illustrator, and then how to save your color palettes as swatches, and how to export your swatches and like take them home to a different computer. And it's really the same process as saving the brushes. So I'm going to draw a bunch of plain white squares, and this is going to be the basis for my color palettes. And these are color palettes that I am going to be picking from when making my collection. I'm not trying to make a color palette for each outfit right now. At this point, you're just going to decide on like the general palette for the collection, and then you'll pick from these colors when you're choosing your colors for your garments. So with one of them selected, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, and I am going to start grabbing some colors in here. Switch back and forth between the eyedropper tool and selecting the box that I want to fill. this is a very straightforward way to design, to choose collection colors. But Illustrator also allows for a few other ways. So we've got a sandy color and a sky color, and that's probably plenty. We'll get a dark in there. This is an awesome, straightforward way, and you could also choose. It doesn't have to be your mood board. You could be picking from a well-composed photograph and getting colors out of that. But I do have another choice. If I want to build a collection where this yellow is my main color, there's something called the color guide window. Color guide, and I have to have the color in the front, right? So if the color is in my fill, the fill has to be in the front, and then here my color is showing up selected. And when I click on the little harmony rules, I can choose from all sorts of different harmonized colors. So let me copy and paste these. And right now I'm going to fill them all with gray. And we are going to choose. Sometimes I have to click on this color to like have it show me color harmonies to do with my main color. But we can choose from like pentagram or tetrad. And if you guys are familiar with the color wheel, the words we're using in these color harmonies relate to the color wheel. So in here, I guess I'll choose some pentagram colors, and then we'll talk about how these relate to the color wheel. It's nice that they offer you different shades of colors so you can experiment with darks and lights of the same shade while still being this nice color harmony. So let's paste that color wheel in here, and when we're talking about a pentagram in terms of color harmonies, if our main color yellow is right here, then if we draw a star starting right there, I'm not drawing the most even star, but hopefully we'll be able to get the idea. God. That was obnoxious. Let's try again. So if this is my yellow, I can draw the pentagram star, and then the point of each of these stars are my respective color harmonies. So this is the orange that's in this color harmony, the purple that's in this color harmony, and the blue that's in this color harmony. So it can be kind of interesting to come up with your own color harmonies using this system, right? Sorry, I just want to change the stroke to black on that. So if I want to develop another one using the color wheel or the color gradient or whatever this is instead, I can adjust where this sits, and we'll make all of these gray for a moment. We can start lifting colors from either the tips, or you can go more inward. But we would be getting a pentagram color harmony this way. So it can be nice to use the color wheel to make your own color harmonies. If we're talking about tetrad, we would be drawing a triangle to gain our color harmonies. Complementary is a color harmony where the colors are directly across from each other on the page, right? You can also choose from further into the center. So that is where those words come from, and you can access them pretty nicely using the color guide. It gives you all sorts of really nice options. Monochromatic, complement, split complement. Okay, so I'm going to delete these guys, and we are going to talk now about the Recolor Artwork tool. So the Recolor Artwork tool, the button for it seems to live in the Properties panel. So if I want to adjust these colors, but I want to keep a pentagram harmony, and I want to keep kind of like their darks and the lights pretty similar, I'm going to copy and paste my swatches and select all of them, and then come up to the Recolor Artwork tool. And on the Assign tab of the Recolor Artwork tool, you can choose to assign specific colors to the new swatch, but I don't use this as often as I use the Edit tab in terms of when I'm coming up with colorways. So you can adjust each of the colors individually on the Edit tab on this color wheel, but you can't undo, so just be careful. I can lock these colors together on this page, and then I can kind of give this a spin. And I think this is a really interesting option in terms of it's keeping my pentagram color harmonies, but it's allowing me to just kind of finesse certain colors. I can change the brightness higher or lower. If I want to add more black, I can do it to all of them at once down at the bottom here. So I think this is a really fun way to play with it. And let's make one more. So I'm going to copy and paste this, select it all, and then I'm coming up to this. It looks like a black and white color wheel in the little button for it in the Properties panel. And we go over to Edit, and we can choose our new colors. I locked them together, and I'm spinning them around the color wheel until I like how they look. So once you're done deciding, for homework you have to make 3 separate colorways, and I'm going to show you an example project where they've used their 3 separate colorways and kind of just what that means. It basically means we're going to be offering different color options to our clients. Yeah, so I think that the colors should still look good together on the page. Like, you shouldn't grab colors. Like, if I'm making bathing suits, I'm not going to grab like reds and blacks and gothic colors for this. But you don't have to. For the second 2 colorways, I would say you don't have to like stick so closely to the mood board, but they should kind of like look nice together. Let me show you the example project, I guess, before I move on to the swatches, just so you guys know what I'm talking about. We're going to add all these to the swatches in a second. So on today's homework assignments, we have an example project here. We're going to finalize your main palette, which maybe this one is my main palette. So like the clothes I actually illustrate are going to be these colors. And then these 2 colors or the other 2 color options I choose will be based on these colors. So hold on, back to Moodle. Let's look at this example project. Holly McGrath was assigned this woman, which is honestly, I think, was a challenge. She has a lot of personality, but like, you're not showing a lot of fashion influence here. It's just a lab coat. So she wrote her little bio about it, and then made a more elaborate mood board, and then got into the flats. So we have the main colorway shown in the actual flats, and then we have the first, second, and third colorway all shown in swatches. So same thing for these jeans. We're going to learn how to put these colors over texture after spring break like this. But she's got her first, third, and second colorway all available on this page. So is this kind of making sense what the end goal is? This looking like this is not due until 2 Thursdays after we come back from spring break, right? The whole client project. I've lost Moodle. It's annoying. The whole client project isn't due until March 19th. Is that right? No, it's due March 26th. Yeah. So March 26th, 2 weeks after we come back from spring break. For next week, you are going to make these 3 colorways, like I'm going to show you in a second, and you're going to submit a screenshot of all of them organized into your swatches panel, and then you are going to create the outline of flats for your client project. So you don't have to have color for these flats yet, unless that's the way you work. If you want to apply color now, that's fine. But you don't have to, and they don't have to have any details on them yet. They could literally just be the outline of them, but you should have 10 looks, the silhouettes of them, done for March 19th after this spring break we have. There's also an example video on the Moodle of just how to do this part of the homework. So it's an old video, and I don't think I explained the homework that well, but the details are all there in terms of how to do the homework. So let's start adding these to our swatches panel, and then we're going to save and export our swatches panel. These folders that you might have noticed, I'm going to close my color guide, are called groups. These are color groups, and you can make color groups from existing swatches. Like if I have a bunch of swatches selected and I come down to new color group, it adds all those swatches to their own group right here. I'm actually going to trash that. So we are going to do it a little bit of a different way, where we're going to select existing artwork, and then we're going to come down to my new color group button, which looks like a folder. And we could name this colorway 1 if we wanted to. And in here, we're going to create the artwork from the selected, or create the swatches from the selected artwork. So it's going to take all the colors in this artwork when I hit OK, and it adds them to this folder down here. So again, select my second colorway, come down to my color group button in my swatches panel, hit OK, and it adds all of those colors to my swatches. So same for this, select them all, come down to the color group, and select OK. Alright, so I have my 3 colors in there, and I'm actually going to delete the rest of the swatches in here. And now we're going to save these swatches as our colors. So we're going to come down to the library menu again. This lives in the swatch panel. It lives in a lot of panels. A lot of panels have the opportunity for you to save the things you've added to the panel. So I'm going to choose Save Swatches. So you don't have access to the Adobe CC libraries, so I'm not teaching you about them. This is a way to do it without the libraries, without the Adobe CC library. This is a swatch library, like a very specific baby. And then the Adobe CC libraries are a lot more flexible. Like you can store a swatch in there and a graphic and like a brush, and it would be like, okay. But you guys, as mass art students, like when you log in, you just don't get access to them, which is too bad because they're pretty handy. So again, I've gone to my swatch libraries menu and I've chose save swatches. And the first place it takes me is the swatches folder inside the Adobe application folder, you know, installed on my computer somewhere. And this is a good place to save these swatches if you are working on your home computer. You would be able to access them through the libraries menu anytime, like all of the other library swatches. But if you are going to bring it home or work on a different computer with it, or you just want to back up your file, you can choose to save it anywhere else. So I'm going to save it on the desktop, and we're going to call it Beach Swatches 2. And we're going to choose Save. So now, if I want to access these swatches, and I am back on this page where I don't have my swatches, I can go to the Swatch Libraries menu, choose Other Library, find Beach Swatches 2, desktop, and again, it saves Beach Swatches 2 as a .ai file, which is a little bit jarring, but really it's just a swatch library. And if I want all of them to show up in my swatches, I can just like select them and then drag them in there. Same thing, sometimes students will accidentally, they'll like somehow open a file in Illustrator where they won't have any swatches showing up. They'll just have the black and white swatches. It happens when you go to File Open and you open up a JPEG that like only has black and white in it. It will be like, okay, the only colors you need are black and white then. To get your standard swatches back, it's available in this little library menu. So you go to the library, default swatches, print seems to be the ones that like pop up all the time, art and illustration. Honestly, any of these will get you kind of your standard colors left. And then you can select them all and drag them into your swatches menu if you want them to be there. So we all know how to save swatches now. Yeah? Okay, so for homework, what I want you to do is to screenshot your folders filled with your different colorways. So to screenshot on a Mac, you can do Command-Shift-4, and your little mouse, yeah, it turns into a crosshairs, and then we click and drag the section that we want to capture, and then it saves on your desktop. And you could submit that. So you're going to submit that, and then your all of your 10 outlines for your flats after spring break. So I don't think it's like extra homework at all. I'm not trying to like overload you with homework over spring break. I think you have a normal amount of homework and you have extra time to do it, hopefully. Questions on anything? Cool. Bye, internet. So let's go to break. Sorry it's such a long lecture. Let's go to break until 4:19. It's me avoiding saying 4:20. So yeah, let's go on break until 4:21. And then after break, we're hopefully gonna have you guys do your brush library and save a brush library. You don't have to do all of them or anything, but pick ones that you think would be helpful to have after spring break and save you some time later on. Thanks.
So like, are we given a client or do we choose one?
We did kind of a mix, but you can choose one.
Okay.
So, under last week's class, you're going to make this up. I don't think I made that very clear in the assignment, but I'm not giving you like her name or her real age or anything. This is all fictional. So here are the client photos, and we can find out what your classmates used. I feel like I might already have it open. Snagit is pausing, so it's going to take a long time.
Like, I did find a photo that I was interested in using, but I wasn't sure if that was like a
So we do want to cross-reference it with the people that the other kids have chosen, or the other students. So let's look. Thursday afternoon class is going so slow.
I don't know why I bought it because it's too big for me.
Did you buy it?
I bought it back. The full price was like.
So you know what number the one you liked was? You have it on your phone?
Oh, it wasn't from the drive.
Oh, so
I
we
just found a random one.
we do have to pick from these 30 I chose. So we can look at this, and then we can also look at the available options, right? So any of the ones that they have picked are not available. Actually, Gianna needs to pick two. And let's look at this in a different way. There we go. So if you want to, you can look at this on your computer, or we can do it here. But you're going to pick one of these women who someone else hasn't picked already. So